The Newcomers is the first and one of my favorite Hoss-centric episodes. The opening scene is a short one before the credits begin. There's that shot of Hoss licking his lips again. Ugh. And it consists of the Cartwrights and their foreman Marino coming up upon some men camped out on the ranch again. We're in episode 3, folks. Let's learn our lesson about camping out on Ben's land, okay? Though we who have watched the show all the way through already know that it's not the case. Ben makes us, the audience, aware that he already knows the identity of at least one of the men, Blake McCall, who has obviously done this before. Two of the others with him are brother and sister John and Emily Pennington. We come to discover that John Pennington and Blake McCall are partners in a hydraulics operation, and Emily is romantically involved with McCall, although you'd be forgiven for not knowing that until you were told, because there's little affection between them. Emily coughs, and it's slowly unveiled throughout the episode how sick she is. In the meantime, John wants to reason with the Cartwrights in a polite manner, but McCall tells him there's no such thing. Another interloper who calls Ben unreasonable. I wonder if we'll get many more of those. Adam stands up to the two men, and John seems to only now realize that his partner may have done a few things behind his back, involving the Cartwrights and who knows what else. One of the other men accompanying them, Flannery the Bugman, tries to kindly reason with Ben as well. Ben begins to explain, even as Emily starts to talk down to the Cartwrights, that this type of mining practice has been known to destroy land and the dreams that go along with it. He cites a friend who once had an orchard, and hydraulics, also done by Blake, it seems, completely killed it. One of the other men gets trigger-happy and Adam has to shoot him. Hoss gets down to see how seriously the man is hurt, and Emily backs away from him in fear and calls him ugly. I don't know about you, but I get defensive every time somebody does that. Have I mentioned that before? Hoss is kind in the face of her insult, and he says he can't help being ugly, and then I yell at the TV. Kind of off topic as far as the episode here, but I just have to say Hoss's mother is one of the most beautiful women on the show, and Ben is a handsome man. There's no way those two made an ugly baby, come on. Besides, Dan Blocker has a pair of the most beautiful blue eyes I have ever seen. What do you guys think? Ben lets them stay temporarily, and of course Blake makes him regret it. Their scene later that night in camp shows just how distant of a fiancé McCall is toward Emily. He begins to make reference to her money and his jealousy, which is a pretty good indicator, at least to me, that he's just with her for said money, and his partnership with John is more about money than anything else. After treating his intended like garbage, McCall talks to his henchman, a man played by reoccurring guest star Charles Maxwell. I admit, I thought at first his name was Groot, and it gave me whiplash, because that's his character's name in another episode he stars in later on. But in this episode, it's Krug. Krug makes a statement questioning Blake's authority, and seems to like it when Blake slaps him? That might go further in saying something about Krug's character than anything else, but we're not here to psychoanalyze the B-tier characters. Krug gives Blake an idea that it would cause even further trouble for the Cartwrights if the Bugman were to meet a terrible fate at what seemed to be Ben's hand. Blake washes his hands of it, and the following morning, just as poor Flannery is approaching the Cartwrights for another harmless conversation, he's shot in the back, right in front of them. I gotta say, I felt bad for him. He didn't have much to mention as a character, but fellow only wanted to study bugs and plants. He was harmless. R.I.P. Bugman. Ben brings his body to the others, and Emily calls his family butchers, making Krug's plan seem to be a success. Ben then points out that this was likely a ploy, which it was, to make them all fight more. Joe spars with Blake verbally before Ben sends them on their way, with Hoss accompanying them. Hoss tries to get out of it because he clearly has feelings for Emily, and he thinks she hates him. When he comes nearer, she recoils again, and he tells her that he wouldn't hurt her for nothing. That line breaks my nerdy little heart. Not long after, back to back, we get a shot of Blake ignoring Emily's needs, and Hoss showing up in the frame right as he leaves to tell her that he made her a soft bed to sleep on. Oh, I love how they did that scene. The contrast is obvious, if it wasn't already, and Emily, I think, finally gets it. Krug then tries to blackmail Blake with the murder of Flannery, Emily, seeing Hoss talk to Chubb, begins to soften toward him and comments on how much he must love animals. Hoss talks about how there isn't any meanness in them, and I totally agree. Big animal lover over here, folks. Meanwhile, the cruel Blake and Krug take advantage of this love Hoss has for animals and purposefully lame a horse so that Hoss will stop to care for it. This gives them the chance to overpower Hoss. Big dumb jerk faces. Sorry. That was an indoor thought. I'm sorry. They ride to Marino's place, and Hoss tries to warn him what's happening before he too is killed, for no good reason, and in a cowardly way again. Another one I didn't get to know well, but that I liked. It's enough to make you hope for a hanging. Emily stands up to Blake and officially ends their relationship. Good for you, girl. The next thing these men do is to shoot up the Cartwrights' home and then leave poor Marino's body on the front step. Ben has no words in this moment, but Lauren's expression is so well done that it makes my gut ache. When the three of them go out in search of Hoss, Joe gets a little hostile toward Adam out of his worry, and then he quickly apologizes. I still love when they do this. It happened in both A Rose for Lotta and Death on Sun Mountain, too, where he fights with Adam and then immediately apologizes. I am so here for it. Meanwhile, where Hoss, Emily, and John are being held, one of Blake's men tries to assault Emily, and Hoss breaks out of his ties to save her. John tells him to leave him and run, so they do. Hoss takes Emily to a beautiful spot on the ranch and tells her about his other favorite place, while he cares for her as well as he can. I think she knew all along how bad it was, because earlier in the episode she asks her brother if there's any hope. She also tells John that without love there isn't. She's now in love with Hoss, but I think she realizes it's too late. She tries to explain why she settled for Blake McCall, and Hoss is so kind in his understanding, as usual. He offers to take Emily to his special place one day, and I think he was getting ready to propose marriage when they hear the men nearby and realize that Blake has stirred up all the miners against the Cartwrights, and they're planning a fight. Emily stays behind, and Hoss joins the struggle, disarming Blake and making the other men scatter like rats. Maybe that wasn't entirely fair. I mean, I know that they probably weren't all bad men. They were just talked against the Cartwrights by Blake, but still, it's fun to see him scatter. When they return home, the doctor examines Emily, and she asks to see her brother. She tells John that she's going home to spend the final month she has left. He wants to go with her, but she tells him to stay and live his life. That took courage. Hoss also asks to go with her, still not knowing how bad it is, and she tells him that he's needed on the Ponderosa. Again, that took courage. He asks her to come back. She says this beautiful line about him returning to a special place in the spring when the dogwoods bloom, and that she will be there then. This is when I lose it and don't get it back until the end of the episode. Hoss assumes she's saying she'll marry him. When he comes to his family and tells them the wonderful news, the doctor informs him that Emily only has weeks to live. He goes through the usual stages of calling everyone a liar and being angry before accepting the reality of his grief. At this point, I'm crying so much that I no longer can see the notes I made, as I've shed tears all over them. Hoss has a talk with God before returning to his family. He does this a few times, and I love it every time. I think no matter what your religious beliefs are, the way the Cartwrights feel and have those expressions of their beliefs is inspiring. The credits roll as he begins to resume his normal life. Hoss-centered episodes either make me laugh or make me cry. No matter what, they are never boring. We really see for the first time in this episode just how wonderful our teddy bear is. And if you fell in love with him the first time you watched it, I don't blame you.